launch of Hydrofeminist Thinking with Oceans. I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic talk. I know some of the people that have written little chapters in here, so very exciting to hear them. I see them, so it's nice to be able to listen to you today. To read them, yeah. So just to introduce this, the University of Western Cape, her research interests and publications include the political ethics of care, social justice, post-humanism, and feminist new materialisms, innovative pedagogical practices in higher education, post-qualitative and participatory methodologies. Boom.
Good grief. Come on.
Give her a round of applause. Next we have Nike Romano, and she teaches history and theory of design at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Her artistic research interests explore the relationship between thinking, making, and doing through a post-humanist and feminist new materials frame. I'm very interested to know what this is. Her most recent publications include Touching Texts, Feeling My Way Through Research Creation in Qualitative Inquiry, and Threading Through Mal, Cutting a Fashion Theory Course Together Apart. And the last but not least, we have Tamara Scheffer, who is a professor of the Women's and Gender Studies Faculty of Arts and Humanities at the University of the Western Cape. Her scholarship has been directed at intersectional gender and sexual justice, with particular emphasis on young people. She's currently engaged with reconceptualizing academic knowledge with an emphasis on embodied, effective feminist and decolonial pedagogies and research, with an emphasis on collaborations across art and activism and thinking with oceans and water. Boom. There we go. So, thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks so much, Tasneem. Good afternoon, everybody, and a very, very warm welcome. It's actually so incredibly beautiful to see so many people from so many walks of our lives, from our neighborhoods, from our swimming groups, from our universities, from our workplaces. And it's especially lovely to see so many of our authors here. In fact, there's some still missing, hoping they're going to turn up. So on behalf of the editors, myself, Fervin, Nikki, and all the authors, a very warm welcome to this launch. It's really so special to be here and so beautiful to be in this particular space. So thank you, Candice. We're going to be doing more thank yous later, but just to say it's a very special space, and I'll also say something about that in a minute. So my task in opening is to say something about what is the project of this book? What are we hoping to do with this book? Or what are we doing in the making of this book? And maybe others will disagree or offer other things, but this is my take on the key things. Mostly what we have in common across the different chapters, and as people who are working in this area, is that we're thinking with oceans. We're thinking with oceans, we're thinking with beaches, we're thinking with bodies of water towards social justice and environmental justice, which we see as deeply entangled. So first and foremost, we think of the ocean as a space that is haunted. It is haunted by centuries of history, by histories of slavery, by colonization, which happened across the sea. It's haunted by people in this country, in particular, people being forcibly removed from spaces near the beach, losing not only community, but also livelihoods, and also leisure and pleasure and engagement with oceans. And even as we stand here in Muizenberg, it's not many decades past that this was a beach that was reserved for white people only. And in many places around Cape Town, black communities were forcibly removed from their beaches, from their oceans, from the spaces that they loved and grew up in and were happy in. So part of what we do in this book is to confront those histories, to acknowledge them, and to find ways of working with them, because they are bleeding into the present. They are still with us, and they will shape our future. So working with those histories and attempting to disrupt the logics that they've resulted in, and to reframe and reshape the way in which people engage, access to oceans, and so on. And you'll hear a little bit more about that in a minute. But we're not only concerned with hauntings of the past, which are part of our present, we're also concerned with hauntings of the present and the future. Because when we swim, when we're in the ocean, we're deeply aware of the kinds of damages that humans, not all humans, some humans are more implicated than others, but the damages that humans are doing and have done to the oceans, to ocean creatures, and ultimately to the planet. So a key part of our work is about thinking with oceans and bodies of water towards thinking how we can live differently, how we can decenter, how we can challenge the way humans have extracted, continue to extract from the ocean, which results in losses for people, for other species, but also for the planet in general. And then the third key aspect is that we are, some of us, well, most of us on the book, are involved in the university in some way. We teach and we write and we research. And one of the things many of us who are on this book have been involved in for some time has been in the goal of transforming higher education, of trying to do something differently. And in 2015, from then on, students and activists reminded us with a decolonial language that we haven't gone far enough, that there's still so much to do and so much to reconceptualize. So one of our projects here is also to engage with challenging the logics of the colonial and patriarchal university, which are about bodies being left outside, affect being left outside, and importantly, relationality and ethics of care, a sense of community, a sense of doing things together. And that's one of the things that being and thinking and engaging with the ocean also has opened up for us. And Viv's going to talk a lot more about that in a minute. But the process of making this book has also been one of deep community, of creating communities, of thinking together, writing together, swimming together, paddling together, and you'll hear a lot more about that when others come on. But then finally, and this is linked, what we are trying to do in this book, and when we think with the ocean, is to think about, and it's linked to the project in the university, but it's wider, is our relationalities, our sense of being connected, everybody with each other and everybody with others, other species, and all matter, in fact. And a lot of indigenous knowledges have always known this. Ubuntu has taught us this, and yet humans, through histories of particular dominance, of particular kind of thinking and doing, have forgotten these ethics, these ways of living, these cosmologies of being in the world. So that's also something that's very deeply part of this and entangled with everything else that I've shared. So we are remembering our entanglements with each other, with all species, with all resources on the planet, in order to ensure, and I'm borrowing words from Sherry here, that we don't only survive, but we also thrive. I'm going to hand over to Viv. Thank you very much again for being with us. It's absolutely wonderful to be here, and here you go.
Can people see me if I sit, or is it better if I stand? Okay. So I'm going to be talking about how this book came into being, the process of the book, which has been going on a long time. And in thinking back how this project started, it's really been through interinstitutional projects, which have been funded mainly by the National Research Foundation, and through our interest in collaborative free writing, as Tammy was saying, reading and swimming, that this book project came to fruition. And I remember some people are here in the room who were part of a 2015 free writing group that started with an interinstitutional project across universities in the Western Cape and in Cyprus and at the University of the Free State, which focused on socially just pedagogies. And then we did another free writing project on walking and free writing, which we referred to as slow scholarship, and presented this at conferences and also published on it in a public pedagogy special issue. At that time, swimming and free writing were separate activities for us as editors. We've long loved swimming, and I was part of a shore method of swimming where we used to get together every Sunday with our swim sisters and have a lot of fun with that. But the swimming and free writing first came together at a slow scholarship course in August 2019, which was run through the Cape Higher Education Consortium short courses, which Brenda Leibovitz and myself were involved in starting, which were across the 4 higher education institutions in the Western Cape, the public ones. That's Stellenbosch, UCT, UWC, and CPUT. So it was at the Volmut Retreat Center where we had our first swimming, free writing, and sharing session. And then I remember particularly Sherry's sharing after that. Tammy and I then presented a paper on swimming methodologies at the New Materialist Conference in December 2019, and we later published a paper on wild swimming methodologies in the journal Feminist Review. We were lucky to get funding for another NRF project called Reconfiguring Higher Education, Doing Academia Differently, and also a South African-Swedish university fund from 2020 to 22. So with this NRF project, we were lucky to be able to buy cameras, which we used in the ocean, and to go on a free diving course. But it was unfortunate that when these projects started, COVID came into being, and because of the lockdowns, this influenced our ability to get together face to face. So we had to do a lot of the free writing sessions online with Swedish and South African partners. And we were only able to start swimming and writing once the lockdowns were relaxed. So the chapters in this book were first thought about at a colloquium in Simonstown on the 19th of August 2021, which we were supposed to have face-to-face, but which had to be online because of COVID restrictions. And many of the authors you'll be hearing from after I've spoken actually presented their papers at this colloquium. And thereafter, Tammy, Nikki, and I approached Karen Murris about the possibility of an edited book in the book series Post-Qualitative New Materialists in Critical Posthumanist Research. And George Rowley, yes, she's here, who's also here, has developed a wonderful website called the Post-Qualitative Research Collective. And if you're interested in seeing it, you can speak to her. And the book series is part of this website. And for those who are interested, there are also podcasts of all these chapters. Hopefully it will be darker by then and we'll be able to see it properly. So I'm going to just tell you the order in which we're going to go, and then I'm going to invite Sherry, who's first. We're going to start with Sherry Hugo and then go to Anya Martin. Then we're going to go to Joanne Pierce, then Karen Graff, Barry Lewis, and then we'll have the poem at the end. So welcome, Sherry.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Yella. I think you've heard quite a bit about the academic bits of this. Yes.
Sorry guys. Everybody okay? You're so helping me calm my nerves if you need that. There we go. Thank you. Okay. Good evening, Sangbona, Mulweni, Alaikum Salam, Namaste, peace be with you, and also with me. If it's okay with you, just allow me to have a moment of silence so I can steady myself and really just hold this really great moment. Thank you. My chapter 13, and I forget the name, reimagining traveled spaces through academia while thinking with and through the oceans. It's chapter 13, it's the last chapter of the book. And hulle sê mos die wat laaste is, is eerste, en jy sit nou eerste in die woord. And this chapter is a photo voice series of photographs that Verity Fitzgerald and I put together, in which I respond to the call of the ocean, to which I stepped in very tentatively and later dived in head first towards justice, a paradise within myself, academia, and society, a justice to come. I visually tell a story of how the tension of my brown body and the entanglements of my old and present injustices around bodies like mine, and the spaces like oceans and academia. It's an honoring of the present and the past at drift. It is about my futures and the past and present all dancing at the bottom of the ocean floor and within me. It's an honoring of those who dare to dream of spaces like this for people like me.
Come on.
And for those who managed to take on the dream with me, to hold the spaces and take up spaces. Thank you, Ella. It's an honoring of those who have passed and who are not seen and are out of sight. It's about the feminist wings that have set our course. It is about the anchors that have held us down when we left our responsibilities in pursuit of this justice. And to those poles who took care of the things that we couldn't. And for all the communities, swimming groups, and all the different things we belong to, that has always been our moral compass. So in this flickering night, I was hoping it was going to be darker. And under the wise moon's eyes, and beneath the shivering waves, under these waves of this book launch, may we rise, ignite, join us to honor this quest, unite as we set our stories aflight and adrift towards the justice for every day and the justice to come. So I set my chapter 13 alight with the words of Blackfeet. And so with that, I would like to light a candle in honor of this very special moment. So with that, I will hand over to Anya. But let me just light my candle there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. That's really beautiful, and I was very touched by the candles and lighting the candles. Yeah. So my name's Anya Martin, and my chapter is chapter 3, I think.
Yeah.
What is the title?
Collaborative innovations into pedagogies of care for South African hydro commons.
Sounds good. Yeah, so, I'm wearing my shades because I've got an eye infection, and while I was resting before coming here, resting my eyes, I was thinking about this chapter and what it means for me. And for me, what stands out is relationships. And relationships and communities, but not only for the human and with the human, but with more than human entities. And so part of what I introduce in my chapter are the methods of inquiry that I use. And the one is struntlooping. I call myself a struntloper. My mom calls herself a struntloper. And it's through struntlooping along our False Bay coastline from Cape Point to Hunklip that I am rediscovering stories that have been buried, that have been erased. I'm focusing particularly on black and brown bodies. And the walks that I go on, it's along the coastline here for sure, but I've walked I love walking. I love walking in mountains, so my walks take me up my local mountain. I live in Lakeside Pinnacle. And through this practice of walking, I met the Protea natida. And the Protea natida became this figure for me. And I went and I looked in my plant book, and the Protea natida is also called the varbworm. And so what I discovered was that the varbworm was used to make wagon wheels, and it was also used as a plant dye. So let's go back to the wagon wheels, because at the same time, I got these images, these pictures from my mom, and she had been given these pictures to her by an aunt, a relative, and she had no idea who these people were. She thought they were family. And another process that I use in my writing and in my research is drawing and painting. And so I started drawing the image of this woman. And I posted this image to Instagram. So this is where social media comes in and how that has played a role in my research. And through posting that image, I met, again, relationships, constantly relationships. I met Diane Peterson, and he was particularly interested in understanding our heritage as Cape Malay Indian people and how we arrived here. And he said, "Who's this woman?" And I said, "I don't know. My mom gave me these pictures." And he said, "I'm going to help you find out who she is." And we went on this journey to the archives, to makbaras, or what we call graveyards, searching, relationships. And discovered that my mom's family owned a horse and carriage business on Plain Street. There's the varbworm pictured. Coming back to the plant dye. So the other process I'm using is a mending methodology. And I'm creating what I call the mother hydro rug, which I'll pull out of my suitcase in a second. And the mother hydro rug is a collection of individual hydro rugs. A hydro rug made from plastic beach waste, made from scraps of material, made from stories of black and brown bodies about their relationship to water. So it's a collection. The mother hydro rug becomes the collection of all of those individual stories. And those hydro rugs are stitched onto, again, scrap material, but plant dyed with the Protea natida. Relationships. And so that is my story, and that is my chapter. Thank you. Thanks. I'll light a candle, and maybe we'll have a look at the hydro rug at the end. Yeah? Okay.
Come on.
They want to see it. You want to see it now? Yes. Joanna, you're
Yeah, sure, sister.
And Tawanda's here.
Yeah.
He was part of the process. So it was, I had the opportunity to engage with Waves for Change coaches. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow.
So thank you, Tawanda.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm just worried about feedback here. Fine. Let me stand this side over here. A long drive and far drive. Not very often. A hot car. Eventually, cold water. Brown bodies everywhere. Excited that in apartheid, I can take my 3 children to places, even though it's not the whites only beach which we drive past, or the whites only tidal pool which comes next. It's the lagoon. It is still the ocean water. We have a good time. I remember the feelings sitting there with you in the water. I feel proud of myself for being able to be in the water with my little girl. The lycra red costume creeps and carries sand. So many houses, no place to stay for the night. We travel back home, sleeping, salty bodies, sandy bodies, on the back seat, mending in time. This chapter is called Relational Bodies of Memory, Time and Place. Hauntings in salty Camisa waters. This chapter is for my mommy, the mommies of the bodies yet to be born, and the mommies whose bodies are colonialism, dispossession, slavery, and homicides. One of the many violences expressed in this law in South Africa that lives inside of my body and many bodies in this room is the Separate Amenities Act in 1953, which built spatial borders separating the land, the water, and relations between nature and black and brown bodies. The presence of those borders forced separation. It's a violent history that continues to wash up in the present and breathes into time, memory, and space. Bodies digest, excrete, and perspire with memory of colonial histories, which forms part of our bodies as we swim with other bodies. So this chapter, in this chapter, I trace the multiple temporalities that seep into my body through the watery memories of childhood, through my womb as a place of life and labor, and in my early 20s and into my salty hair. I find myself floating in False Bay, a part of Camisa as a doctoral student in environmental education research. So my journey with water is wild, with fear and misunderstanding, and yet I keep finding myself in the ocean. As I struggle to trust the backwash pulling me into the expanse of the ocean, my spiritual sensibilities are awakened. As I notice the skins in wetsuits that speak about difference, exclusions, and access, it makes my palms sweaty. I'm unclear about what to do with my fears, and equally feel like salty water welcomes my embodied complexities and questions. Do the wetsuits hold the memory of access to salty water for the bodies that have never been separated from the sea? I find it hard to breathe. I search for a place where the noise softens and reveals a map for calmer waters. I turn towards my research, hoping I will find a language for the complex stories of bodies, land, and water, and a language to express the violence and the voices and the thoughts. In the kelp forest, the water, kelp, salt, boulders, jellyfish, sand, and brittle stars seem to dance diffractively and relationally. In other words, they are not entities or contained bodies alongside one another or bound by physical position or space, but they are connected across space and time. So I embrace bodies as neither stagnant nor separate, nor zipped up in some kind of impermeable sack of skin. Bodies are vital sites of experimentation. I refuse, we should refuse to be zipped up in the invisibility that accrues to brown bodies, and we should be disrupting the very notion of being zipped up. I come to notice the entanglement with bodies in relation to difference, loss, wetsuits, access, place, time, and memory. My choice not to wear a wetsuit cannot be reduced to a tactile defensiveness, as the zipping of that thick, rubbery skin is a closure and form of containment. My body responds to the wetsuits by resisting its grip and releasing the anticipation of sweatiness, because there are too many other sweaty encounters for my brown skin to live through. So I end with this. The spirit hovers over the deep. What memories sing in the crevices of the surface? Where do they go when they rise? Who makes bodies evaporate? Who listens to the marks of condensation on skins? When does the weight make it return a precipitation? Bodies being pulled, reclassified, removed. Dragging waves, pulling bodies deep into the darkness. Hands stretching, but the water doesn't flow over them. Breath is taken. The waves demolish the walls. These porous skins speak of these questions and tell these stories. Bodies erased, bodies buried under the surface of colonialism. She is 9. She is on a bus. My pa is the conductor. She goes onto the train with her mommy and 3 siblings and all their baggage and watermelons. They are breaking the law. I'm 38. I get into my car and I'm not breaking the law. I'm a stranger. I'm asked multiple times, where do you come from? She is 9. She can't swim. She doesn't remember the tidal pool wall. I'm 38. I can swim in a pool. I'm petrified of the tidal pool wall. She is 9. She sits far away from the tidal pool. She is wet. She doesn't stay long because they see her and her family. She is back on the train. I'm 38. I stand on the borderlands of the tidal pool where the water meets the wall. I go underwater. I stay and I keep going back. I keep swimming towards the wall. The ones we no longer see, they are there and here. They glisten with a saline shimmer. The ones to come are calling. My mommy, my body, more than 2 bodies. I swim because I can't keep drowning. Thank you.
My name is Karen Graaf. My chapter is number 4, I think. It's around surfing as a space for activism and social change. I did not bring my notes, bravely/foolishly. So let's see how we go. Just read it again. I struggle to think about what... Oh, do you want me to? Yes. I struggle to think about what to say tonight because I have felt pretty disillusioned by surfing recently. It's felt a bit disheartening. And that makes it difficult to try and be positive about the spaces that it's doing well. You know, last year there's a local surf shop and their way of celebrating Women's Day was to say the waves were too big for women to surf, so they should sit on the beach and drink coffee while men paddled out. Happy Women's Day. Billabong a few weeks ago brought out a new advertising campaign and all the images are of female models, no female surfers. You can't see most of their faces and they're all in bikinis kind of draped over something on the beach. No one's surfing, no one's enjoying themselves. Rip Curl brought an ad that had a trans surfer. They got some pushback, they instantly pulled the ad. apologized to the people who complained, and threw that surfer completely under the bus and left her to get hate online. For the Paris Olympics, the surfing event is going to be in Tahiti, and the first thing they wanted to do was build on top of the coral reef, so to destroy part of it for more development. And surfing has been extremely quiet about Israel's violence. No one speaks up. So yeah, I haven't felt very excited or inspired by surfing spaces recently. What I've chosen to take as the positive is that in hearing about these stories, the fact that I've heard about them means people are still speaking up. So that Cape Town Surf Shop, they had to apologize because a lot of people absolutely dragged them online, understandably. Billabong had to change, they didn't change the campaign, they had to change their tagline. They didn't really apologize. They told one of the protesters to get a life. But enough people spoke up that it became a story. Same as Rip Curl, enough people complained about the fact that they had really treated a trans surfer badly. And it highlighted how thin their inclusion and diversity efforts are. There was a big enough global pushback against the construction in Tahiti for them to have to completely change their plans. Most of those protests were headed by local Tahitians who put together really big protests that got a lot of international support. There are at least some surfers who are speaking up in support of Palestine. Those spaces give me some optimism, and the fact that they still exist in the face of really strong pushback from mainstream systems, that's the part I'm choosing to focus on. It doesn't always feel like enough. Today I hope it is. I hope it gets more and bigger. I hope a chapter like this at least highlights the fact that people are doing things differently, that it's not just the Billabongs and Rip Curls who keep getting to decide what surfing looks like, because I don't want it to look like that. I know there are surfers here who also don't want it to look like that. Yeah, so I remain cautiously optimistic for the future, and I hope those spaces keep growing and get stronger, and that we connect more and realize that there are more like us who are also willing to push back. So yeah. Do you have a light? I have a candle. There are microphones. Very good.
Harry, do you want to come sit here?
Sit here. Tammy tells me to stand. Do what Tammy tells you to do. Hello.
Hi.
How do you follow that? My name is Barry Lewis. I'm previously an architect from the UK. I've been here 15 years. I run a company called Ubu. Ubukle Baka Ubukle. Beauty builds beauty. We function and we attempt to build places of belonging using eco-beams and sandbags in informal and formal places. I had the very great luxury, not luxury, but the privilege of working in an informal community for 10 years in Philippi. And in and through that time, you start thinking differently about the city. We live in the apartheid city. I used to say, how do we build home in the apartheid city? And now I'm starting to think, is home possible in the apartheid city? In it and through it, people are making, forging, rooting communities without permission, without government support, without NGO support, without the manual, and yet home is being made. There's something about the zinc forest that we need to pay attention to. The zinc forest was termed by a professor, Voyani Vellam, in 2016. When I heard that, my lens changed. And he said this: the proliferation of the zinc forest is the prophetic building of the city. something about the perpetual making of the zinc forest, being rooted and established, a site of indeterminacy, a place that we need to think with, not just change. It took me 5 years to realise that maybe we're not looking at a housing problem, maybe we're looking at the current solution to housing, because the people have done it for themselves. How do the architects, designers, people who have any interest in infrastructural change, now we're all designers, we're all doing something here, we're making rugs, we're trying to build a different city. How do we position ourselves? How do we take responsibility for ourselves in this changing, hauntological apartheid city? The apartheid city exists today in this room. That's what hauntological means, it's always becoming. So maybe we should start to question our obsession with anthropomorphism or anthropocentrism, and maybe we should decenter the human. Certainly as architects, I think we should do that. I can't speak for any other profession in the room, but I can guarantee it probably applies. And so how do we do that? And I think one of the things that I've done over the last few years, I've had the great privilege of thinking with other worlds, with more than human worlds. And I found myself in the kelp forest. I'm a bit of a diver. I like diving. And it saved my life, I think. And I started getting obsessed with details. But I didn't know what I was getting obsessed with until Dr. Nazreen Pierce says, "Why do you keep posting holdfast images?" And I'm like, am I? I didn't know. What's a holdfast? Anyone know what a holdfast is? Of course you do. Holdfast is at the base of the kelp. So you have the blades, and then you have the stipe, which is the trunk, and then the holdfast is the rooted system at the base. It's an algae. It connects to a rock base. So I got obsessed with this. I was looking at the base, and I was like, what is going on here? She was like, why did you take images? And I was like, because it speaks to community. I think it speaks to the zinc forest. I don't know why. So, marine biologist from Stellenbosch University goes away and does some research. No one's done any research in South Africa on the holdfast, finds some money, does some research, and hearts and minds blown open. So in 2022, 40 holdfast extracted from 4 different sites. And guess how many species they found in 40 holdfast in 4 different sites? I'll buy an IPA to anyone who gets close. How many species? How many species? I don't buy lager. 50,000. Give me a break. Keep going. 48, 50.
500.
400.
It would be a disappointing story if there was one species. 200 species in the holdfast. And that's an amazing detail, but it's not the most amazing detail. The most amazing detail is that they were all juvenile babies. And as a marine biologist in a scientific lab with scientific things, the doctor of science was able to say this is an example of a nurturing habitat. Do we think we need to learn about homemaking from the more than human worlds? And so this chapter, chapter 11, of course we don't know the name of the chapter, but it's something around diffraction and diffracting. We talk about the apartheid city, the separateness of the apartheid city, but we've learned on a Monday morning in reading group the inseparability, the entanglement of all things. Maybe the zinc forest and the holdfast isn't so different from the kelp forest. Maybe there's an entanglement. How about we use a methodology called diffraction? So one pebble goes into the pond, another pebble goes into the pond, it creates a ripple effect. What happens when the ripples hit each other? A new diffractive pattern, a disturbance pattern. So in this chapter we talk about a story that Nazreen speaks about and a story that Andile Bankolo speaks about. He's from Sweet Home Farm. He came up with a concept of an egg. He holds the egg, and his whole life is the egg. If he drops the egg, he dies. So he had this whole narration around guidelines for staying alive. How do we diffract that story through the story of a brittle star? How the heck does a baby brittle star come out of the bursal slit of its mother and find home in the holdfast? But yet these stories weave in and out of each other. We have an obligation to try and find new durations of home in the apartheid city. Thank you.
Thank you, speakers. And like, you stuck to your time limits. Well done.
You said you were the pregnant woman.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad I inspired the fear of God. So we will open it up now for questions, discussions, thoughts. Yes. Yeah. After, yeah. Not all at once, eh? Okay. You don't have to have questions, any thoughts? No? Yep. Comments. What about comments? Some comments. Yep.
I'll just say a wonderful theme of community.
Yeah. Thank you.
From beginning to end, each of us needs to be in the UK.
Thank you. Maybe the speakers want to say something. No?
I mean, for me, it was really great to gather and have the authors speak into their chapters now, you know, because we were all part of the colloquium and we all presented our papers then, and I've listened to all the podcasts. I haven't read every single paper, every single chapter in the book, but it was really amazing to have us shared collectively here, and to find the threads, you know, the common threads, community being one of them. Thank you.
Yep. Go for it. You want to come closer? You can stand. Do you think we can hear you from there?
Just to say your words, your writing, your sharing, incredibly beautiful and moving, and just thank you very much for giving me time to us today.
You use the term justice to come a lot. So I would be interested to hear from some of the authors what they understand about that.
Thank you, Alex. Great question. George will tell you in the last reading, I struggled with that, and I even asked the group about justice. I found that after the book, Justice to Come raised more questions than it gave calmness. And I started thinking, I don't have an answer to you, I'm just sharing with your thoughts. I struggled with whose justice? And I struggled with, in the current times that we are living, everyday justice compared to what we think are big, great justices of the world. And who gets to say what boundaries justice fits into, and whose bodies and figures and humans and non-humans are affected by the justice. And I think I spoke to Tammy, or I think it was Nikki, when I was trying to figure it out. Justice to come. Is it to come? Is it close? Is it almost here? Or is it Canaan? Are we going to go? Are we not? Is it far? Is it a fantasy? Are we, as academics, writing these things in hope of a far thing that's in another planet that's too far away, that's unattainable? And so I really don't have an answer for you, but just to say that I struggled with the justice to come, because in the time that we are living, these brought up even more questions, which I think is exactly what we are hoping the book will do, is make us ignite each other's thinkings and stories and swimming ripples, and help us rethink what that justice looks like, when it's to come, how it looks, and how far it is. I don't know.
I also have a question, maybe. Can I throw that out there? I don't know if I was allowed to. No, you just happen to. No, it's aimed at everybody. What I was wondering is if you could maybe speak more about linking to justice. Like, what are the practical? You know, it's very beautiful to read. It's nice to read. It makes you feel nice. It makes you feel sad. But when you working in a school in, I don't know, Ocean View, Lavendale, or wherever, how does this translate into an everyday reality, into a practice that a public beyond an academic or this kind of space has access to?
I think Tammy wanted to say something after me, but I think my response is, I was sitting there now thinking, the room was very quiet after I was reading, né? Like, maybe it was a little bit intense, but there was also a feeling for me about that's exactly what it's about. It's about staying with the intensity. I think a lot of the acts of justice or the interests in making better worlds has been about speed, and it has been about doing something that we've been doing for a long time, which is just keep moving forward and leaving those goedes behind. And I think that's the whole point for me, about writing in the space, is how can we ask different questions? How can we not ask different questions when the questions we've been asking are showing us that we are leaving certain relationships out, or that we are ignoring some of the intensities? And I think that that's part of the Justice to Come work, is it's not about finding out what matters at the end, but what has been mattering for so long that we haven't considered things that haven't yet mattered. So children sitting in schools versus children sitting in comfortable, resourced schools. You gave the example of schools. So if we know 1994 open schools, and yet we're still seeing the same things we're seeing today, or when we go to St. James Tidal Pool, which is what I wrote about in that section, and you notice who's there before 9 o'clock in the morning, how can we not be asking different questions about who has access to beaches and why those bodies are there at that time? And maybe if we do that, it will allow us to sit with discomfort and recognize the different privileges that we have, and then using those privileges and handing those over to those who have not yet had even a little bit of that privilege. So I think it's not about coming to a solution, but it's about pushing for different questions. And we have learned the lesson that there isn't one answer, because the point is the world is always on the move, and we have to just sit with difficult questions and then notice what differences matter more than others, because they've never mattered in the same way.
Thanks, Josie. I actually wanted to say something which is not so much about justice. I don't know if justice is a helpful term, actually, when one thinks about how it's located in certain systems of legal histories, and in a sense, justice means we've got to do justice when something bad has been done, but actually what one is asking for is a radical rethinking and reframing and reconceptualizing. Uses justice to come a lot, and I would love her to say something, but in a sense what we're doing there is troubling justice, because it is always becoming. It never is. It is something that's always becoming through dialogue, through process. But actually what I wanted to say is that unfortunately we don't have all of the authors here, and what I think the Justice to Come question also speaks to is that a lot of the chapters speak to activism, and Corin's chapter and Anya's chapter do as well, and others do as well, but we didn't have a chance to share all of those aspects. But there are also activisms around legal action in the chapter by Dylan McGarry, Lalelo and Ndwandle, around art and activism, which is it's a performance. There's a lot of art, there's a lot of activism, there's a lot of doing to make a difference. And in fact, what was so special about the process of making this book is that we didn't only have colloquiums where we presented academically, we didn't only sit and talk and read and also swim, but we also we did activism together. We went to a protest together. And I think those are the moments that stood out, that are so deeply affecting, and that is woven into the book in different ways in different places. So that's all I wanted to just add to that. Thank you.
Viv's going to say something about the justice to come.
Well, I mean, I don't need the mic. It's just where it's derived from. It's Jacques Derrida, who spoke about a justice to come, in that it's a never-ending process, and it's an ethical process that we can never stop doing. So it's really an ongoing ethics in every aspect of our lives. And, justice, according to him, will never be achieved. So it's a different way of seeing ethics. So I think Anya has... Did you heard? Okay. There's one question.
Thank you. It's been great hearing you. So I've been thinking about the place of pleasure. I'm thinking, why do I go to the beach? And very often it's for some kind of pleasure, which may be in the water or not. And so I'm curious to know what some of your reasons are. And they all of these things, of course, that you've spoken about too, but like an articulation of pleasure or not? Yeah.
Who are you directing?
Maybe
difficult question to answer, and it sounds like it should be obvious, because we do go to the beach for pleasure, and it's communal, and it's fun, and it's there's so many ways to enjoy water and the ocean. It's one of the great joys of my life to be at the ocean, in the ocean. I am massively privileged in that my access to it has never been restricted. So it's never been a contentious thing for me to go to a beach. And I can't say I have a concept of what it's like to not have experienced that, but I do know that that is something I'm unusual in a lot of spaces. But it's why I keep going. It's why I keep surfing, even as surfing feels so hostile, because it is such a joy. And I think joy and pleasure is such an important thing, if we're talking about activism, to sustain activism, there has to be joy as well, because otherwise you can't sustain it otherwise. So for me it's a life-giving space. I don't know if others want to.
Well, I feel like I'm speaking too much, but I just have to say thank you, Hugo. Kadam, it's so fantastic to have you here. And I forgot to say when I said it's so wonderful to see so many people from so many walks of lives, also people I've worked with for years and years, that we've all worked with in the academy and in other spaces. So we were part of the Apartheid Archive project. And in fact, a lot of the narratives that we share in this book came out of that project that we started like 20 years ago or so. We all got old. Not you, Hugo. No, but I just wanted to say that I think that it also links to the project we're doing in the university, because, there's no joy, there's no pleasure. The bodies are left at the door. And so what I think we're trying to do with decolonial feminism is to bring the body back, but also in remembering the joy and in bringing the joy and the pleasure to not forget the incredible pain and tortures and losses and hardships that are also entangled with all of that. But I'd love some of the other authors to maybe say something about joy and black joy.
One of the reasons that I like to go is I didn't at first like the ocean at all. And the people in the ocean tell me that I put up huge fights because I do things. All these white women want to waste our time because I do things to go swimming, and I have a plan, I don't understand. So I had a very difficult journey with the ocean.
but for all the other reasons that were mentioned, but the one that I want to tell you about now, that it's my life right now, that it's a deeply spiritual place that I go to meditate and to pray and to really deal with the part of me that the academia and society has boxed and made me believe to act in a way. So above all of the other things, it's very difficult for me to go to the beach. I have to cook all the food for my children before I can go. I have to clean the house, do the washing. I have to do all the things that is of a normative wife, woman. I don't know if you understand. But all of the normative things that is required of me before I can go and do what seems like a pleasurable time out for myself. And it's to go to my favorite spot, which is the spot that I feel most safest at, and the spot that this group has allowed me to learn about. And to get there is like an hour and a half drive from where I am. So, and I try to go there every week. And sometimes I go there every second day. So you can imagine all the petrol, all the effort, and I don't drive, so I still have to solicit my husband and my son and my mother to look after the children while I go. So I go with lots of effort, but I go for a very different reason now. And thank you very much for that question. I think we've all kind of took a moment to figure out, why do we go? So thank you.
It brings up an image for me listening to all your beautiful writing about the themes, and the themes really, really attracted me when I saw the invitation. I was like, oh, this is just like, I want to write for your book. Listening to all the things that are said, and the academy and the ocean in one sentence, it's like so obvious. The ocean is the best teacher and the best classroom we could possibly ask for. So,
Yes, yeah. So I get to do the easy part. Yeah, images. And which is to say thank you to the audience. Thank you for being here and celebrating this moment with us. And thank you to the authors. All of the authors. I actually feel like we're in a hold fast right now. I feel like we're in a nurturing community space of potential, hope, joy. Thank you for the question around pleasure and joy. And with the joy, but speaking personally, the whole process has brought me much joy. I've got to meet people, I've got to swim with people, and my life has changed. And I'll be forever changed and grateful for that. But now I need to put my glasses on. And I'm jumping ahead to do the thank yous before it gets too dark, because I wrote with such a tiny pen the list of who I have to thank. There are people like the Boulders Beach Lodge, where we had both our colloquiums actually, which was where we got to meet people and share ideas and, of course, swim together and have fun together. The NRF and SASU for the funding, of course. The Department of Women and Gender Studies at UWC. And Casey. Is it Casey or Casey for the catering, which I have yet to tuck into, but look forward to tucking into. To Karen Morris, who's the editor-in-chief of this book series, for her encouragement and her support. And of course, George, who we have mentioned already, for the webinar series, the beautiful website, helping us curate the podcasts, and also for facilitating the ongoing, very focused reading group that scholars are engaging with at the moment. I know Sherry's been quite regular at those gatherings online. And if anyone is interested, speak to George, because you can gain access to those. To Routledge for the production of the book, and also for hosting, or particularly Eleanor Taylor, actually, in Helsinki, where we had the first launch of the book, for making that all possible. For Audrey from Cork Bay Books for selling the books tonight around the corner. To Candice, Tawanda and the team here at the Commons for the venue, for the view, for the vibe. It's my first time here, so it won't be my last. Tasnim for chairing the session. What's the word? Timelessly, I don't even know the word. Yeah. And also for making the book available at the Simonstown Museum. And then the authors that aren't here, to say thank you to them, even in their absence. And finally, I want to thank Viv and Tammy. For myself, they've mentored me through a process of making a book, of which I've learned a lot. And for writing and swimming and thinking together. I really feel so lucky to have had this experience, and I'm going to end it right there. Thank you. Oh, Jonathan Ball, yes. We didn't realize that Candice and Jonathan Ball, who are the agents for Routledge in South Africa, who printed these books here. Yes.
So together with the reading group, we also have panel discussions. So we've got a set of 4 panel discussions. The next one is happening next week, Tuesday, on Zoom at 4 p.m. And if anyone would like to join, you can check the postqualitativresearch.com that was mentioned earlier, or also our Facebook page, or you can also ask me about it, I suppose. Cool. But yeah. That we'll be having these panel discussions, and it's another way to continue engaging with the ideas and what kind of people.
Thanks. So, okay, we're now going to watch the poem, the performance, and just really thank you all again very, very much for being here. Okay.
Connected cable. Okay, lights. You know my word.
Sorry, internet.
Tide, the water pools exposing the rocky shore.
Oh, sorry.
Bare feet step and scramble slowly over ragged edges into pools. Eyes search the crevices and hidden wells for straws, earbuds, chip packets, bottle tops. Sweet wrappers, fishing line, water bottles, light sticks, carrier bags, lollipop sticks. These totems of our fast consumption. Swimming with starfish and nudibranchs, growing with sea anemones and feathered duster worms. A dozen dirty lifetimes wash into the ocean's swell. First quarter moon. Before dawn, the harbour hums with engines switched on, ropes whipped back and nets held on. Fathers, uncles, husbands, brothers throw silent prayers overboard, asking the currents to run with their nets, to fill their boats, to feed their families, to keep the lights on. Out in the deep water, the men remember the stories of sea as living being who must be honored for its provision. The men speak of a time when whale was ancestor, just as cave was, and rain, and how rain comes from the ocean, a dance between sun and sea, evaporation. Water in air cools its breath, condensation. Clouds exhale to cleanse skies, precipitation. Rivers, soils, lakes take the water back, collection. An endless cycle of give and take, one we keep breaking, but have the power to repair. Full moon. This is False Bay. This is the bay of slavery and escape. This is the bay of railway lines. This is the bay of shipwrecks and fishermen. This is the bay of forced removals. This is the bay of tidal pools for whites only. This is the bay where Kwamata sleeps. This is Table Bay. This is the bay of Urikwacho. This is the bay of canalized rivers. This is the bay of sweet waters. This is the bay of washerwomen at the river. This is the bay of trade and travel. This is the bay where our ancestors fought. This is the bay where our ancestors won. And deep below the surface, in the dark stillness we cannot see, phytoplankton absorb carbon, release oxygen, creating clean air for us to breathe. Third quarter moon. These tidal pools were fish traps built by koi hands, stone for stone. Now we swim with octopus and sea hare, urchin and cuttlefish. In the water, ordinary citizens become scientists, and the children of people forcibly removed return to learn again that the sea is our home too. So with paper and pen or an app on a phone, we record, collect data as we clean the shore that has fed us for generations. We swim, we dive and explore the world below, and with each wade into shallow waters, with each deep breath held long.